This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for nearly 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. Hey, do you like free stuff? As a member of the operating crew, you'll get a chance to win awesome prizes each month. For less than a dime a day, you'll be entered to win, and just as important, your support helps keep every episode from behind a paywall and free of those unrelated and annoying commercials you hear on other podcasts. Sign up today at aroundthelayout.com/crew, and thank you for your support. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you can join us. It's time once again to find out what's happening in model railroading, and there's nobody on the planet better to do that than the editor of Model Railroad News, Tony Cook. Tony, good to see you.
Ray, how you doing? You know what I miss? We used to get to hear the music. Do the people still get to hear the music? Because you don't play the music for me anymore. You would play the opening theme. You
didn't hear it? I played it.
Did you?
Oh, you can't. You're pulling the curtain back.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's kind of got the jam and music. I miss that. We don't get to hear that in the recording side, but I'm sorry if I've betrayed the pull the curtain back on things. But I'm doing good. I can't believe it's September.
It is September already. It's clicking on by, and you and I had a debate about if there is a model railroad season or not, and I said that there is, and I'll say that model railroad season starting for us up here on this half of the equator. So there's just so much going on. It goes, like you said, it's a 12-month venture. Things are going on all the time, but seemingly all the train shows are starting now. We've got quite a few that we're going to be doing some preview shows for. And, it seems like things just get a little bit hotter as things get colder up here. So
I would agree with, speaking of that, I wonder up in Canada if it's the same way. Why don't we bring
snows there all the time, doesn't it?
Oh, I think it's cold.
Yeah.
See, it's cold year round. So I assume it's always model railroading season, just as they've always got the shovel at the front door ready to get rid of the snow. So we have got none other than world famous Jordan.
World famous.
He is world famous. Well, Jordan Smith of Rapido Trains. Jordan, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Tony. How are you doing?
We're doing good. We're excited to have you on board. I was telling Ray before we got started, I said, I want to talk. Obviously, we talk about the companies and things, but it's the people as much as anything. And I said, I've known Jordan for several years. I know in common that we're Ford guys. So there's that, or model train guys. But I don't know. I know some of your cohorts are N-scalers, but I don't know that you are. So I was wanting to, first of all, tell us what is your job title at Rapido Trains, and how long have you been with Jason and his wonderful Canadian manufacturing company?
Well, so in terms of my title, depending on the day of the week, but generally I do a lot of our public relations, a lot of our marketing stuff, social media, YouTube. I actually started almost 9 years ago.
Wow.
Back in January 2016. My first week at the at Rapido was actually the Amherst Train Show in January 2016. So it's going back a few years now, but that's when I was back in the shipping department. I would do shipping and shows and customer service, and I was also the receptionist for a while too. So I did everything. But I've graduated from the warehouse now, so I'm in kind of just doing publicity and marketing. It's lots of fun. YouTube and stuff.
And you guys do such great videos, and I know you've got your new show. What are you calling it now? There's a show, and you did the one where you announced the N-scale commuter cars and the F-59. I forget what you called it, but you've got that new kind of studio look, and you're doing a show or something. Yeah.
RTTV. It's based on SCTV. We figured we'd go. We've even kind of borrowed the same kind of branding.
Yes,
it seems appropriate, and we've started doing that as a more, because we've always kind of just done videos here and there. We're looking to do an actual kind of structure now. So RTTV to talk about new products and new launches and deadlines and stuff like that, and more. So we're getting professional. We're trying to get professional, anyways, as much as we can be. So
it's fun stuff. Yeah,
I was going to say, between all the videos and the one with Michael Gross, and then a whole bunch of other things, and the things that the bus from California, you're hard pressed to find a group that has more fun in the hobby than you guys. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and we that's kind of our whole thing. We love what we do, but we also love where we have fun doing it. It's not just all work all the time. Every day is a new experience, and we're always like everything, like just whether it's developing new products or having fun videos or going on bus adventures. It's lots of fun.
So now, do you bring toys to work like Jason does? Do you have wrestling action figures, and what toys do you? What impressed me by saying, like, I bring like Mego Planet of the Apes figures into work every day with me or something?
Well, I keep all my trains in the office, well, most of them. So my office, I have most of them are in there in cases. I have all my Star Trek stuff, so I have a whole bunch of ships that are kind of around. They're sitting on my desk. I've got 75 Monaco. Die-cast Monaco sitting right in the middle of my desk beside the Enterprise B. So it's a kind of chaotic office, but it's just like Jason's office. It's full of stuff and things. So
that's very cool. And what is your start? I know a lot of the guys starts in the hobby. In fact, I can't remember, that came up recently, and I said, oh, you'd be amazed how many Spirit of 76 train sets are the starting point for so many folks. I know you're not old enough for that, but like, what's your background in the hobby? How'd you get started in model railroading and such?
So I first got the bug in the summer of '92. This is we have a cottage up in our cabin up in just a bit north of Toronto, a couple hours north on CN's Bala subdivision. And I remember I was only 8, 9, I just turned 9, and we were in town, and CN had parked a manifest right on the main line, and it was meeting the Northlander. And I just remember the Northlander comes into town on the siding with the FP7 and the B unit, the APCU, and the former Go cars. They were so new, they still said Go on the side. They hadn't even finished painting them yet. And CN had these SD40, they're just SD40s sitting on the main, and I was just captivated by that. And ever since then, I got my first set was the might remember it. Model Power had a Midnight Express train set this is the winter of '93. And that's where I got started. It had like this Penzi 040, which I'm pretty sure was out of the Tyco line back in the 60s and 70s. And that was where I got my start. And then it just went from there.
So HO. HO's been your...
Oh, yeah, HO, of course. HO, yep. Yeah, I did that for, 8-9 years. I was just doing some basic modeling stuff as a younger guy does. And I decided, I was in college at the time. This is about 2002. And I decided it was time to get a job. So I put in an application at George's Trains when the store was still in Toronto. And Dan Darnell actually ended up hiring me in November of '02. And I worked at George's from, off and on, because I went to college and I changed jobs a couple of times. I worked at a hospital for several years. But I was working kind of at George's kind of from '02 until roughly around 2016 on a part-time basis, while also working at a hospital in Toronto. And that's just where I kind of learned the business in a lot of ways. And then Jason kind of picked me up in 2016. He'd asked me to join a couple of times. I kept saying no, but I realized how much money I was spending on models, particularly Rapido models. So for the salary change, it would have been to leave my hospital job. I was making up for it in the amount of models I would now get from the company. So
I just want to clarify, you learned most about the hobby at George's, not the hospital, right?
Oh, definitely not the hospital. No, I was working in the patient transport department. So at nights I was the guy that picks up the bodies at night and takes them down to the morgue.
Wow.
There's nothing to learn about the hobby there. No.
Oh no. But seriously, working at George's, I learned pretty much the ins and outs of everything, all the manufacturers, everyone's product lines, and it just kind of went from there.
Wow. And Rapido, I mean, the thing I always say about Rapido, I've said it when I do news stuff with Ray, I've said it when I've done shows with you guys. As busy as I think I am with the different magazines and projects, I don't know how you guys get any sleep. I mean, I saw the FT early samples recently, and they look awesome. That new HO Scale FT. I was just playing with, and this isn't new. I sent it up to Kevin Holland. Passenger Train Journal is finally doing a review on it because they wouldn't part with it. That D10, that little steam locomotive. I love the way it connects together. Ray, you've got to see this. I've got pictures of it. I'll send you a picture, but it almost has like a drawbar that is a connection with the electronics. So you don't have to fight with those little pin connector things and the wiring, and the wiring gets caught around the drawbar coupler system. But boy, that little, for as great as your freight cars, passenger cars and locomotives, and your automobiles, when you were doing those too, the steam locomotives, it's kind of one of those, it'll get off my radar until I'm playing with one, and then it's like, boy, you guys do some good stuff. And you've got a new steam locomotive coming out now, I believe.
Yeah, and they actually just started shipping this week. That's the Canadian Pacific, the H1As and Bs. So this is the standard Hudsons. You have the standard Hudsons, and then you have the Royal Hudsons that came later on, the C, D, and E class. So these are the A and Bs. They were built 2930. And of course, the most famous one, possibly one of the most famous locomotives in North America, is CP 2816, which has been restored. And insert obviously went down to Mexico earlier this year. And that is included in our release.
Nice.
And they're shipping right now, so they're going to be in people's hands probably by next week.
Very cool. That was a fun locomotive to see. I got to see it at the CPKC event in Kansas City, and it's for a smaller, because most of the restored steam it's the Challenger, the big boy, something
exactly,
the Northerns. Yeah. So this was a more normal or regular size steam locomotive, which I thought was really cool. So that was a neat piece to see. But as you're doing the different projects, I know you guys all get, I mean, it's whatever works on what Jason's Railroad from 1981 or 2 is what everything.
December 80, I think it is.
So it has to work into that prototype. But it seems like all you guys bring different projects to the table or have different things you're working on, and I think that's always fun to see. What is your passion? Is it Canadian train stuff, or are there other prototypes that what's something model wise we see that it's like, oh, that was my idea, or that's something I was interested in?
So, I mean, when I was younger, of course, everything was Canadian, CPCN via Ontario Northland Go Transit. That was kind of my entire worldview of railroading. Much later, I really got into the Penn Central, probably about 10, 12 years ago. And that kind of morphed into the Southern Pacific and Amtrak. So pretty much the 1970s into the early 80s, that's kind of, I've really zoned in on that myself. As it's just really cool. Stuff that we never saw in Canada. Penn Central, it was up here, of course, but SP never would have rarely would have ever been seen in Ontario. So that's really been kind of the thing that I've gotten really into. And we've seen a lot of new models, especially a lot of the new SP stuff. I can't claim to actually be designing them because we have some great project managers that actually do that. But I do get to use my influence once in a while to suggest certain things, like some dome cars maybe, or other models that we've done for out west.
And boy, SP and dome cars, Ray, I'm sure you've seen that beautiful 3/4 length dome, and they've even announced it for N-Scale. So those people that immediately raise their hand and go, "What about N-Scale?" That's coming in as well. I can't wait to see that car. Your slumber coach. We did the Missouri Pacific, which is a sleeper coach, I think, and then we did an Amtrak. Justin Sobek and I reviewed that HO slumber coach, and wow, it's an absolute beauty. I thought it looked. I ran it across the 2 pages, both of the cars stacked, so you could get a real good look. The finish on that was so beautiful. The passenger cars that you guys do, and that one you went to all that detail on the interior and the shades and the color, and I love the green tint of the window inserts. Your passenger cars are unbeatable. So this SP dome car, I think, is really going to be a treat. And it's you're doing a couple of different ones, I remember seeing it's in that CP Consist 2 modified, right?
Yep. So in terms of the overall run, of course they were all SP. They're all home built using Bud dome sections. They're built on old SP tavern observation cars and parlor cars, the stuff pre-war cars from 1937. So they built these into domes in 54, 55. So SP had them corrugated originally. They lost the corrugations due to the rusting issues in the late 50s, early 60s. But they actually, they lasted into Amtrak. Not all of them, but most of them lasted into Amtrak into about 77 or 79. And then just for some miracle, almost every car, except for I think 2, have been preserved.
Wow.
And most of them are in service still. There's one in Panama. We didn't actually do that one, but down in Panama, there's one running still. And then, of course, CP's car, which was rebuilt from the ground up. The dome section is still all original with new glass. But the guys over at CP, we've been in the car a couple times, and it's just extraordinary, the work they did to get that car ready to run with 2816 down in Mexico. And we've included that in the new release.
Did you on the private train when it was here in Kansas City? I ran into one of, I think he's KCS Heritage, and I can't remember his name now, but he's one of their PR people. He said, you would not, when I told him who I was, as I was shooting pictures there around Kanoki Yard, he said, you would not believe how many guys on this train are model railroaders.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize that. That's really cool. That's fun to hear. Yeah.
I know sometimes they keep lower profiles kind of in a professional level when it comes to that kind of thing, or like rail fanning. But a lot of them are as much into either the real prototypes or into modeling as you can expect.
I think that transportation thing, it's funny because, as I say, you and I share cars that were car nuts. Mm-hmm. And I can remember being at slideshows where suddenly somebody wants to show a bunch of jets. And I'm like, hey, what happened? Why are we looking at pictures of like this 747? And it's like, oh, that's not, no, that doesn't count. So, but I think the whole transportation thing, it's funny, but yeah, cars especially, I think, are the secondhand hobby of so many railroad guys. And what is I was trying to tell Ray that I think you've got an old Panther platform. Do you have a big Crown Vic or do you have a Mustang? I can't remember which one you have.
Both.
Yeah, both.
So I have a Mustang. It's a 13. I have a 2011 Crown Vic. So that was the last year they were sold domestically. It was originally a police interceptor. But it's fun. It has no features. It has no CD player or anything. And not that I need CDs anymore, but it has an AM FM radio. That's it. And cruise control. The air conditioning doesn't work, but that thing will run for 500,000 miles.
Exactly. Yeah. I keep seeing these YouTube videos where the guy says, this is the best used car you can buy. And it'll be one of the old like Lincoln signature town cars. And I think, I still have space in the yard. I got my Lincoln Corsair. I got my Caddy Eldorado. I think a big town car would look great in the yard between them. And those are, I think, unstoppable cars. So I am looking, and I want the ones with that town car goes through a couple of iterations where they get rid of the hood ornament. And I got to have the hood ornament. I got to be driving and look down the hood at the Lincoln Star Cross thing. So I think
they dropped that in, it was like 02 or 03 or something like that.
They kept kind of rounding the nose over and it finally went away. But
I think when pedestrians were getting impaled with them.
With the Crown Vic, have you now passed the era of benefit where people think it's a cop car and get out of your way?
Well, it's interesting because I have the Mustang. I have Jason's old Ford Flex I bought off of him. I'm using that as a kind of a daily driver. I get more people asking about the Crown Vic than anything. Not that it's a police car, but they want to know about it. They want to know, like, where'd it come from? Where'd you get it from? How fast can it go? And stuff like that. It's actually not a fast car at all, but it just has that presence to it. It's a great rail fanning car because it's essentially a truck frame almost compared to unibodies these days. So you can take it anywhere.
See, I got to have one. I got to have one of these.
Yeah. Well, they're still around.
I know that's a thing, boy. They are getting aged, but so what changes do you see in the hobby? I know that we've been seeing DCC is like always changing. Like every time I start to write something up, it's like, okay, this N-scale model doesn't have the next 18, which I'm still figuring out. It has the something 24 plugged to it now. There's so many different things in that's always changing. How do you guys, first of all, keep up with that plan for it? Because when you're designing a model, it's not like we're going to sit down and design it on a Monday and Friday it's going to be in stores. So how do you keep up with all of those kind of changes on DCC and LEDs? And, well, they want this now. They want ground lights. It needs to do this. Like
Mhm.
that's got to be what is the next thing on the horizon? We don't want to end up making the model that was the last one that didn't come with this or that. We wish we would have had
Yep.
it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is we're as much as we're in the business, we're all modelers too, and we all want to see all of these different things, additional lighting features, additional functionality, and stuff like that. So it's just kind of, I mean, we got a lot of N scale guys on staff now, and that's why we've got so much new N scale that's been announced just in the last few months, and we're actually looking at all the different ways we can put new tech in there, marker lights, and we're looking at doing like strobe lights on the cab cars at N and stuff like that. It's just lots of fun, and we're figuring out how to fit all that tech into a small package, and it's coming along. So we've got stuff like that that's really neat that's happening.
Yeah, I see it kind of like that. It's like, well, how far can you push the needle forward, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, we're limited by volume, right? What will fit under a shell, and you can't make things disappear. You still got to have a motor, still got to have flywheels, still got to have drive shafts, still got to have. But how do you just start compressing things down inside and be able to make all this happen within a shell?
Well, that's one of the big things is in the last 10, 15 years, the micro LEDs or the SMDs that a lot of manufacturers, and we're using in a lot of our models now. I mean, that technology, I mean, if you look at the bulbs and headlights that you saw in locomotives even 20 years ago,
right?
They were like actual bulbs. Now you've got these little SMDs that are directly on the motherboard, on the lighting board. And it's amazing how small they are and actually how bright they can be for such a micro little light.
It doesn't seem possible. Yeah, you'll take something apart and go, that's a thing that's doing the ground lights, or that's what's doing this. That dot on that little green square there's no way.
Yeah.
It's like, that's amazing.
You've seen our CN GP9 RM.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Set. It's got the strobes at the rear of the long hood, the front of the short hood over the cab, and also mounted underneath the walkway right above the fuel tank. So you've got all these strobe lights that are just flashing all over the place. And it's just so cool to see that kind of thing. And you couldn't have done that 20 years ago. The tech just didn't exist yet.
And speaking of, I actually pulled that model up, the GP9RM. That thing's been quite a hit on YouTube. I've seen so many folks, including our good friend Trackside Mike has been running his around, and we've got a bunch of other people with that locomotive as well. Quite a hit for you folks.
Oh yeah, and it's such an iconic locomotive too, because in a lot of cases, CN's rebuilt Jeeps have been running as rebuilds longer than they were actual factory built Jeeps. Some of them have been 40 years now since the rebuilds.
Yeah.
So they apply to a lot of eras, a lot of different, and in the States too, because a lot of them after the IC merger, a lot of them ended up south of the border in the States, the US.
The thing that I find surprising on those sets that I think as you're taking that out of the box where it's like the mother slug pair, just looking at the slug and its size, your first thought is, well, it can't be powered. This obviously is a dummy. And then you realize, well, it's a little too heavy for that. And it's like, it's really powered. And I think it was, that low, was it the EP5 electric, whichever, there was some model you came out with where essentially you could have sawed it like 2/3 of the top off and it still would have ran because all the motor and everything is down low.
That's like our RDCs.
Well, the RDCs and like the turbos and such, that it's like, how come you can look in the windows and there's not a big gear tower standing in there? It's like, I don't know how they do that. But boy, the slugs, I was really impressed that everything's in there. They're great looking, and those are fantastic models. That's your first Jeep. In fact, I think that's what I called. Though I did the one review of the one Jeep, and Kevin Holland's doing the mother slug pair, and I call that Jeep review "New Jeep Maker and HO" because, Rapido's not done a Jeep like that before.
Yeah, it's our first one. It's our first. Yeah,
and boy,
and it's the first of many. So obviously we've announced the CP rebuilt GP9Us. I actually just had the first samples in my hand earlier this week, and they look incredible. They've got some tooling updates that we got to do on them, but they're amazing. And then we've got the slugs, which are former SW1200s, SW8s, and such that have been gutted and totally rebuilt into slugs that are going to go with them. So that's going to be neat. And we've got lots of slugs we're working on. We've got the MKT Jeep 40s, a top seller. And so there will be more slugs that you're going to be hearing about from us pretty soon.
They're cool projects. They're really neat. And I can't think of, I don't know, as far as fully assembled from a major manufacturer. I mean, when you first, I remember I forget who was a project developer on it, but asking me for the numbers on those Katie slugs. I'm like, they'll never make these. I'm going to dig up these slides and do all this stuff. There's no way they're really going to make these. And it's like, I started doing, I'm like, yeah, these are pretty cool. And it's like, yeah, but they'll never do this. And wow, it's like, you got all kinds of that kind of stuff. That's very cool.
Yep. And that MKT set, there was only one. There was only one slug. It did go to Union Pacific, but of all the GP40s we announced in that first release, the MKT Mother Slug set is the #1 seller.
Wow.
Just shows you. So that really showed us that we need to be doing more stuff like this.
That's cool. And you guys certainly are not afraid of that. I mean, from the turbos to the FL9, the EP5, again, it's things where I scratch my head thinking, really? Jason's talked himself into doing this? I can't believe this. It's cool, but who's going to buy it? But I guess there are.
That's really the thing. The way the market's gone. I mean, yeah, we've got like GP38s, GP40s. There are a lot of those on the market, but the thing that's really that people are really looking for is that those unique models that no one's ever touched, things that you'd never expect to see in HO, or that you would have had to have bought a brass one where they made like 10.
Right.
Stuff like that is where we're really seeing a huge surge in sales. The stuff that's unique, that maybe there was only one or two of, but they lasted for 20 years or something like that. So we've actually got some more RDCs we're working on that we haven't announced yet that were extremely unique that we're going to be announcing probably later this year. But it's that kind of stuff is really what people are looking for.
Yeah, and I think they're looking for that, even if it has been done before, that little bit better level that you guys are able to provide, that notch up, that instead of the basics, the high functioning things like the ground lights, like the classification lights, clean running, great sound, great decoders. That's the stuff that people are really after. And I've mentioned this on the show when we talk about GP38s. And if you can remember the meme that was out there for quite a while with the Tiger King, where it says, "I will never financially recover from this."
Oh, yeah.
That's me. If you guys ever put out the New England Central GP38, because I will never financially recover from building a roster based on that. So dropping a little hint.
Oh, yeah. It's actually funny because one of those actually came up to Canada for quite a while. I'm not sure if it's still there or not, the Godrich Nexter. They had one running around, and they just painted out the name, and they were running it around for years up here.
Right. Yeah, there's only a few of the blue and golds left, and there was one. I think it's in the deadline going out at St. Albans just a week ago. So that's a locomotive that means a lot to me. I'm dropping a hint because I can, and I'm sure it's already on your radar. And I'm excited yet fearful about a release for that. But your GPA 38s look great. I've seen, a good friend Mark Herrick just purchased the BNSF one, and he raves about it, and I've seen other folks with them as well raving about them. And one thing I can say about Rapido, and I've gone in, I've touched a lot of pulled boxes and opened them. It's an experience to buy a Rapido locomotive. It's not just the locomotive. You've got a great owner's manual in it. It's just very well done.
And stickers and stickers
and stickers. We've got new stickers. So for a long time we were and I think Jason had some conversations with us it was not too long ago, because we were putting stickers in, and we got to the point where the same stickers had been in about 5 locomotives in a row. So we just put a new batch of stickers in, and I think they're coming with the Hudsons. We've got 3 new ones that are going in there. But even the instruction manual, try to make it interesting, so you want to read it to see what everything it is, whatever it is to say. We try to make it fun.
Yeah. And they are. I say that in every review, that if you're not reading this, you're missing one of the best entertainment parts of the hobby, whether it's jokes about, if you need to take the shell off, be sure you're doing it in like a clean room with 0 pressure or something. They do so many great, that the manuals are awesome. The stickers are cool. And as you say, it's an experience. The unboxing of the Rapido stuff is nice. We talked about some of the technology stuff like keeping up with the DCCs and all that. The one thing that's been on my mind this week, because I've been comparing the Draper taper, the Dash 840 CM. I've got a red, white, and blue BC Rail from the Prime Movers original release, and then the new sample that you sent of the newly retooled one. So I've been doing comparison pictures and looking it over. And what's your take or what's your thought on that? Because I know that was coming out. Everybody always talks about how they want something at a lower price, but then I feel like that came out and you saw here you've redone it and brought it up to a higher level. That again, it almost seems like, well, we say one thing, but we really want the other, seems to be what the hobby is in so many cases. And looking at that Dash 8, the new one is beautiful. Not that the Prime Movers one was all that lacking, but I do see the differences in the things that were, changed to get it to a price point. But what's, again, do you think that really is where the market is? That maybe somebody says, gee, I really want a $50 locomotive. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. The Dash 840 CM, the Draper taper, was that model along with the original run of the Gunderson well cars. Those were planned to be part of a train set 10 years ago. That was the original concept, and it just became too expensive. And finding track and power supplies it became ridiculous. So it was just decided. This is before I was working at Rapido, but it was decided to sell them separately. The Dash 8 kind of became this locomotive that was kind of aimed at a lower cost market. We did very well with them. They sold out. We did the new run of Dash 8s, and we sold as many. And this is obviously at a higher price point and a higher detail level. So we realized that, yes, we did this locomotive at a lower price point, but if we'd originally done it as a high-end locomotive at the time, we would have sold just as many. So that was kind of where and that's kind of why we haven't really done a lot of that again since then, because that's just the market is asking for that level of detail. There might be still like a market for a lesser expensive one, but it's there's a lot of stuff. We hear that all the time. Like, well, we wish your locomotives were $75. It's not what we're aiming for in terms of like the detail, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
There is so much on the market. There are so many manufacturers making a variety of product for all levels, whether you're looking at the Athearn, the ready to roll, or the roundhouse stuff, AccuRail with their great little kits that they have. And I have many of them. There's something for everybody.
Yeah, and you don't go to a Ferrari dealer and ask them for the, economy compact. It's like,
exactly.
You just got to know. You got to know who you're. This is what our market is. This is what we bring, and an understanding of that. And boy, I wish everything was less expensive in the world. We'd all be very happy. But in turn, it's about value, and it's the value you bring and the items that that are coming. The features and benefits of these locomotives. Yeah.
Well, it's one thing I see a lot, especially on social media. We'll see, this is a beautiful model. It should be a lot less expensive. And people don't realize that, it'd be nice to have it at a cheaper price, but we also we're not a museum or a charity. We have to, because the money goes into like the staff and research and development and actually producing the models and shipping them out. So it is expensive, but you have to see what's behind everything. So it's going well. So I can't complain about it.
Social media is a horrible place. I don't recommend it to anybody.
Exactly. Whenever I see some company caught in a firestorm of, whatever from the rivet counters, and that's always an email that I will send saying, well, remember poor Gordon Varney never had to deal with any of this. But it does get crazy. But the thing about Rapido, you guys are so transparent on, if there's something you're changing or something you're working on, or why hasn't this come out yet? You're the first ones to say, here's why this is behind, because we've found this, and this out, and we're going to make it right. So at times retooling things to where it's like, this is already ready to go, but we're scrapping that because we found out we got to fix this or that. And I think that kind of information it's priceless as far as the reputation it's built up for you guys, and just that know-how of they're willing to do this or that, where they basically toss something to the side that was ready to go because they found it should be this and it ought to be better. So, wow.
Well, one example of that, we announced our GP40s last year. Since then, we went back, and this is Dan Darnell took over that project earlier this year, and we pretty much totally redesigned them from the ground up since the original samples. And that's why it's been like 8-10 months since the original samples came out. We're in the middle of retooling every single road name right now with a whole bunch of corrected details. So we're actually expecting to see samples on those in the next 2 weeks.
Awesome.
That'll be like we've shown samples of the earlier ones. These new samples actually blow away the old samples.
Wow.
So so significant upgrades, and that it has taken a while, but we don't want to kind of ship them without a lot of the improvements, namely the fans. We've been working with Dave Hussey over at Canon. We licensed his fan design. So the GP40 will be the first product that has officially licensed Canon fans.
Nice.
Made to their design specs, which is really cool.
One thing I also like to see in the Rapido releases, especially here in the GP40, we've recently started the Talking Ops with Don Iris. And prior to that, Don was going through some of the requirements of good operations. And one of that is capacitors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I see now that you have launched your own capacitor in the Mopower.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that and the advantage of having a capacitor.
That is something that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time. I know we've been hearing about it probably since before I was working at Rapido. People were asking us to put capacitors in our locomotives. So that is a feature that we first rolled out. I mean, we announced it first last year. I believe the GP38 and the D10 460 were the first locomotives to have them. Every new locomotive going forward, including a lot of ones that we'd previously announced, will have capacitors going forward.
Nice.
And that also not just includes locomotives. We've included that feature in all our passenger cars now too, which I think we only started doing that about 4 or 5 years ago. Our RDCs have them, and it's kind of just become the standard. I mean, it's expected now, and we've gone that way as well.
It's such a safeguard, though. I mean, how many times for all the locomotives that I test, and I basically have set up, different curve radius things to run them on, and that where they would kick or hit a dead spot and stop and restart, and that was so common in that capacitor thing, just wipes that out, and it makes them so much more robust as far as it's not going to die no matter what. Although there is one downside to them. Mm-hmm. Here's what I encounter. One of the last things I do when I'm testing is full throttle with my pulling power measuring thing, So I've got it going. I got the thing at full power to see how many ounces it can pull. And usually I kick the throttle off. I grab the model and I do on the scale to weigh it, because then I take the weight and the pulling power to give it. So a lot of times I've got this thing with the capacitor in it that's still going full blast that I'm trying to drop down on a scale that wants to go flying off a shelf. So I'm having to kind of, remember, don't just grab that until it's really come to a complete stop. So hands and feet need to stay in the car until, we've come to a stop. But I have had those but it's very cool. And it's so awesome to pull a model off the track and the headlights are still blaring and the sound's going and it's running. It's like, it's alive.
I think I did that on in our GP38 video. It was about a month or two ago, I think in June or July. And that was the thumbnail. It's just me holding this GP38. It's a Conrail GP38. The marker lights are lit. The headlights are on. The little walkway lights. The sound is, you can't hear it because it's a photo, but the sound is actually blaring. And it's just in my hand for like about 8 or 10 seconds before it finally discharges the capacitor. That's really cool. And it's just, it's a really neat, the technology is really neat.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tony, change your workflow, because these locomotives need the capacitors. And as Don and I have talked about, no matter what kind of track work you can lay, a capacitor just makes operations that much better, and putting these locomotives to work and having where it doesn't stall, where you're not tripping up all the time. So kudos to you guys to recognize that and put it in as part of the offering in those locomotives.
Oh, thank you.
The product line that I wish you would bring out, and I saw this at the St. Louis RPM, and I forget who was there at the RPM for you guys. I know them. There was a lady there and the other, I can't remember now, but you had,
no.
What was it?
That's I think it was Listra was there along with Dan Darnell.
That's right. Yeah.
Jeff was there.
All the stuff you had laid out on the table. The one thing I could not resist picking up and I wanted really bad, you had early 3D printed samples of the SD79s.
Oh yes.
And Ray, I know this is going to sound silly, but the collector in me, I see it and it's got trucks, it's got couplers, but it's a static model. Like you can't turn the trucks. It's all fixed. The couplers look just like they're, because again, it's 3D printed. So it is what the model is, but it's in that light gray, milky blue, and it's just a block, but it's this cool little detailed SD9. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is so awesome. I said, I would buy these if you would sell these as little, whatever things. And I guess it was Dan, one of the brake cylinders had broken off it or something. And he goes, well, here, you can have this. And he gave me the brake cylinder. I'm like, boy, these are so cool, though. I would buy these if you could sell and make little plastic.
Absolutely.
What would I do with them? I don't know. But if you've already got them, these would be fun things to collect, to have these little whatever.
Well, it's neat because we have a couple of new project managers. So Jeff out of Chicago, he's been with us for 2 years now, just going on 2 years. Michael is up in Washington State. He's been with us about a year now, I want to say. They do 3D. They have their own 3D printers. So Jeff, he's the project manager for like the C30, the C36, the SD7910. He pretty much redesigned the SD7910. He's been doing that for several months. Redesigned it and then printed out at home the prototype samples off of his own 3D printer. And the same thing with Michael. He's done a couple of his own things, like you might remember the tanks, the M6 60A1 tank and the Mark 42 gun mount. He 3D printed those at home because he's a car guy. He does 3D printed cars, and he has all the equipment, so he just prints them out. And there we go. We've got samples out of pretty much out of nothing instantly. And it's really been neat to take those to shows and it really helps show what we can do or what we're going to be doing before we actually have tooling samples.
And it's very cool. I think I saw the C30 at Spring Creek a year or two back. It's the first time I saw one of those, fully done 3D printed block models. And it's like, dang, I would buy these if they would put these things out. It's like I need something else to collect, but these would be fun. Yeah.
Well, you're not going to have to wait very long for the models themselves because they are shipping from the factory in like 2 weeks. Awesome. So we are actually air freighting those in from the factory. So they are going to be shipping before Halloween, the C30-7s, and we've got the first decorated samples. They look incredible.
Cool.
They're pretty much exactly their state of the art C30. You've never seen this amount of detail in a -7 before. So
wow, eager to
really
see those. Yeah.
Well, Jordan, want to thank you for coming on and sharing what you got going on at Rapido and getting to know you a little bit as well and hearing about your model railroading story. And like I said, great products and a bunch of guys having a whole lot of fun up there in Canada with the folks there at Rapido Trains.
Exactly. And look forward to be back on the show soon. Maybe I'll bring some people along with me. So,
I mean, if I could be on your SCTV show, I can do characters too. If you need,
come on up to the office. You have the passport. You've got a whole studio now. We're building a layout in the studio, so you're both of you are welcome to come and join us. So.
All right, we'll have to jump in Tony's Lincoln and head up to Canada soon.
Yes, excellent. Sounds good to me.
Jordan, thanks so much for your time on a Friday evening while we're recording this. That I hope you set your VCR for Dukes in Dallas so you didn't miss anything tonight.
Exactly. Yes. Alrighty.
So, Tony, tell us what's happening in model railroading.
I'm very excited. There's a new F unit, which I know there was did you hear that? That were eyes rolling. An F unit. Yes, indeed. The Athearn Roundhouse F7A. That's the new tooling, the revised tooling on the world famous classic Globe Models F unit from 1954 that finally had its last round in molding. I talked to John Stackpole at Athearn on that recently, getting the the lowdown. I said, what exactly happened? Because you're still running the F7B. So what happened to the A? And I think he explained it that they were trying to shoot new windshields inserts, and they were having trouble that they weren't fitting correctly. And I guess the mold is just old enough that it had a split or a crack in it. So they were going to have to do some repair work, and it was already, it's almost like an old car. As he was telling me the thing, I'm like, yeah, I've had cars like that, where it's like, do you want to put a transmission in this? Because it needs a water pump. And I wouldn't think much of that engine for very long. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, none of that. Let's start fresh. And that's what they ended up doing. They tooled a new F7A. This is a basic model, nothing added to it other than it's got the 2 air horns up on the roof. No molded on parts either, though. So if you want to do a craftsman level project, you're set and ready to go, that you can drill and put in grab irons and handrails. It's a phase 1 F7A. The first run is out. There's also a run, as I mentioned, the F7B. They're still running the globe tooling on that, that there's sets of those. And then there's a third run that has just F7As. So they all kind of piled up because they were running into that problem when they announced those however many years ago and couldn't get it done. So all 3 of these runs are landing for the Athearn Roundhouse brand. And that first run, if you can find one, I think is $116.99 retail.
Yeah, good entry point.
Yeah, it really is. LED lighting. It's got a 21-pin plug in the mechanism. Real easy to work with. I've got an Amtrak and a Union Pacific example that'll be on the cover of December's Model Railroad News, and I'll have some background on the project, kind of some of the things I've shared on how it came about, and then just some history on that, because it is certainly a world famous F unit in the hobby.
Absolutely.
The other one I wanted to talk about, I think we missed this, and I'm disappointed that I didn't, because I put it on the cover of November's Model Railroad News. The State Tool and Die Southern Radio Control Car. I don't think we talked about that, but I'm sure you remember seeing those guys at the St. Louis RPM this past summer, and they had those basically almost shake-a-box kits for that cool Southern radio control car, 2 different lettering styles. It comes painted, decorated. So it really, as I say, is very close to, speaking of Athearn, an old blue box type kit that you're basically putting trucks, couplers, and a couple of details on it. I actually even built one. The one you see on the cover of Model Railroad News. I did it, and there's not even big fingerprint marks where I stuck, super glue to my hands and had to peel my hands off the side of the car. But and I just did the basic. This is the stuff that came in the box. There's more you could do. Harry Wong at Railroad Model Craftsman, I got him a sample of it too. I'm sure he will do a better job putting one together, and will show it off better. So watch for that to pop up in RMC in a future issue. But if you'd just like to see the basics and some history on it, this was, I think I called it old time radio DPU. That it was Southern's, where they filled that car full of stuff. These are mid 1960s added to the roster to be able to put, power throughout the train. And it's a different thing that kind of you wouldn't expect to have as such a readily available kit. And that's State Tool and Die. And you can find them online at State Tool and the word and die, as in DIE.com. And they're a neat company. They've got a lot of other odds and ends products too. And they've told me, Kevin from there said they are working on some other interesting projects. So keep them on your radar.
On this car, if anybody's ever poked around on YouTube, there's a great old, like 1984, I think, video from Norfolk Southern, and it's called Saluda, the Mountain of Challenge. And it actually shows them taking a coal train down the grade of Saluda, which, if anybody doesn't know, what was it? The steepest grade in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And they had these on it. And it was neat to see this car being made, because that's what they were using for radio remote, was they had these on. And I never knew what it was. I just said, well, you got to, string a coal car. And then this big thing, big billboarded Southern on the side of it. I'm like, what is that?
Like a box car. It looks like a 40-foot box car with no doors.
And so anybody, want to see this car in action and go down the wormhole, and especially if you like kind of old videos, old Southern, the shows them basically taking the train down Saluda grade. The road foreman is still wearing a button shirt and tie. It was just it was a totally different era, and really neat to see, Saluda now being, is now deactivated, but it's neat to see it being used and how they got the trains down the mountain. So check it out there.
It's a cool piece. Yeah, definitely. ScaleTrains, museum quality. They launched with that wonderful UP G-Tel turbine, the multi-unit, HO scale turbine. And then what the SDL39, the wonderful little Milwaukee SD, was another museum quality. And they have just shipped their latest museum quality, the SD45X, which is a beast of a 6-axle unit that they tinkered around with about 1970, and SP bought a couple of them. So it's an odd duck. There's basically the EMD demonstrators, and then it's ahead of the Dash 2 era, but I think it was working on some of the things that they were, say it was the Centennial DDA 40X worked in some of the Dash 2, like electrical cabinetry and that kind of stuff. I think this was another test bed for some of that. And basically looks like an SD45 with an extra. So it's got 4 radiator fans in the back and a flat end like an SDP 35 or 40s end. It's a neat looking piece. That beautiful metallic blue General Motors EMD demonstrator, and then Southern Pacific is the other. But another one of those wow factor models of who'd ever thought that would be a plastic model. It's a museum quality HO scale. Naturally comes with DCC and ESU sound as one version. It's and the other would be standard DC, of course, for those that would want that. But yeah, SD45X, I'm eager to see that. What a wild beast, and that's new from ScaleTrains.
I remember that being announced. I think Shane was on just before the 2023 NMRA National Convention in Texas, and I believe that's where they announced this. So
I think so. Yeah,
we're that far away from that already.
Wow.
Over a year ago. It's crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mentioned I talked to John Stackpole. I had to ask him. I said, I've got this picture of you holding an early sample of that Roundhouse F7A at Amherst, and I said, I know that wasn't this year. And he goes, oh, it wasn't even last year. I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I think that's 2022. Like, okay, yeah. Wow. It's like, it doesn't seem like it, but I guess it would have to be that long ago. So yeah, time flies. Walthers, new run of mainline SD60s. If you're looking for kind of that, that's the mainlines are mid-level stuff. And I really always enjoy seeing those releases come through for review, because the paint work, the detail stuff on it is basic, but the paint work is excellent. They do have a dress-up kit that you can buy that you can add grabs and like lift rings and other things to it. These are Spartan cabs, so the regular cab SD60s, those cool blue and white Oakways are in the group. And that main line does come as a standard DC that you can add DCC to. And then I think this round 2 Walthers has now jumped on board the Sound Ready DC. I think it's got speakers in it as well, which I'm seeing more and more from a lot of the companies. But a new run has been announced for mainline SD60s that will be out. It says winter of 2025. So I think after the first of the year sometime.
You mentioned Oakway. We also got Sioux in there. We've got Canadian Pacific. We've got KCS, CIT. But then they got Suzy Q in there, Susquehanna, which is really cool. Yeah. And that's a neat railroad, and one that just a really neat, that yellow paint scheme. And
for sure,
I've banged around central New York lately and been able to see a few Susquehanna trains. So it's really cool to see the SC60s coming out from Walthers.
Nice release. I did a video with Ross and Matt from Atlas, and it's on their YouTube page, going over their latest catalog. And we talked about new products, and I shared some prototype images for some of the things. A really fun, it's about 45 minutes, I think, where we go through that latest catalog of HO and N releases. What's nice is as these guys talk you through it, they explain the things, because, they're the product managers and such. And he talks about like, well, we added ditch lights to this, and we added this that we wanted to last time but didn't make it, and it did this time. Like, I had no idea those cool Atlas Master, that AEM7 and ALP44, those little dual-ended electrics. I don't know a whole lot about those, because, anything east of the Mississippi is like, I don't know.
A foreign country to you.
It's still 4 foot 8 inches between the rail heads. It's like and is Penn Central still running out there? I don't remember. But anyway, so on those,
I haven't seen anything.
And that's, I'm razzing you. But on these new Master AEM7 and ALP44s, they told me about different modifications they've done. Like I never knew on that ALP44, either the sides were always correct, but the nose on the original run, that was one of the first of kind of the new wave of Atlas products when the Master and Classic brands were created about 99 or 2000. And they borrowed the front or some piece of that nose was always on the other one, so it was never quite correct. It will be this time that they've added a couple of new tooling features. There's a cool Pincy alternate history or reality, whatever they call it, paint scheme that's nice. There's New Jersey Transit, and then the AEM7, they do all the cool, Amtrak Phase 3. They do Amtrak with the Wave Herald on it, without the Wave Herald. So those are neat models with several updates to the tooling. I think I mentioned Ditch Lights, the N-Scale Master GP39-2s, which is a great little 4-axle unit for a switching layout and N-Scale. Ditch Lights have been added to it for this run for the first time, and that's new stuff from Atlas. And again, the thing that got me, I love the catalog cover for it's summer 2024, and it just came out here at the end of summer. It's got Southern Pacific U-28C on the cover and a desert scene. It's a really cool shot. And there's a new run of U-28s coming out in HO scale. But again, check that out on Atlas's YouTube channel, and you'll see Matt Mosikas, who's their product manager, and Ross and I are on there too, and we wander through all the neat Atlas stuff. So lots of fun things happening there.
These AEM7s, one thing I can say about my area, not too far from me, about an hour east is Quonset Point, and sadly that was the funeral for a lot of the AEM7s. Huh. They actually got cut up and crushed down in Quonset Point, except for one. And I'm trying to remember what museum it went to, and it may have been Danbury, Connecticut, but I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, you can definitely email aroundthelayout@gmail.com and let me know I'm wrong. But I remember one being saved and heading to a rail museum. So that was really cool to see at least one saved, because up and down the Northeast corridor, you just saw these practically all the time on all those, Northeast regionals. So cool to see one saved, but a whole bunch of them met their demise down in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. So,
wow. And then finally, it didn't seem like it was that long ago, but I bet it's probably been more than a year or so, but our friends at Ron's Books, we had them on and talked about some of the things, in addition to selling railroad books, that they also publish a lot of things. They've got a new Chicago. It's exploring the Chicago and Northwestern in Iowa and Illinois. And James Lunard helped put that together, and all of his stuff for whoever he's done books for, I'm always impressed. In fact, I think he is now the president of the Chicago Northwestern Historical Society right now. But this is a new, I think it's a hardcover. It's a $50 book. Go to ronsbooks.com and exploring the Chicago Northwestern in Iowa and Illinois. Looks like it's kind of the typical, I think there's a, diesel set on the front. So I think we're talking definitely diesel era type coverage in that. But that looks like a really good book and a neat project that Ron's Books has picked up and has put out.
Always cool to be able to go through a book and learn history, especially for those that didn't get to witness it. And, these golden eras that we seemingly have gone by, and check them out. So very cool.
I had the October edition of Railfan is always their annual Alco issue. And it landed in my mailbox today. And Gordon Lloyd Jr. does a multi-page article on Alcos in Mexico, which is awesome because, Alcos, the switchers, they had some odd ducks. They had things that they bought secondhand from U.S. railroads. They had Montreal Locomotive Works, things from Canada. But it's a great feature where he basically goes from dieselization through, like 1980 or so as Montreal Locomotive Works ends, and covers all of the different, railroads and who bought what down in Mexico. So always fun. And, that's where Bandit's favorite railroad is down in Mexico. I don't know if I ever told you that. And you know what railroad that is, don't you?
I don't.
You don't?
Which one would it
It's
be?
not.
No.
It's not the NDM.
Do you have to put Bandit on so he can answer for himself, or you're going to have to do it yourself?
It's not Ferromex, but Bandit is a diehard Chihuahua Pacific fan.
Oh, why wouldn't he be?
Of course. So yeah, there you go. So he wouldn't let me put the magazine down till we'd gotten all the way through it. Yeah, that's Rail Fan and Railroad October.
Awesome stuff. So where else can we find Tony Cook?
I don't, a lot of times you can find me in the drive-through no, wait a minute. I've been so busy lately and I've had so much stuff coming in. I should be doing more on my YouTube channel, but I've not been. But Model Train Resource, you can find me on YouTube with unboxing videos there. And again, Model Railroad News every month, and Diesel Era, which I'm working on fourth quarter. The third quarter is out with Rio Grande SD50s on the cover. Fourth quarter, I'm going to be doing Pan Am's GP40-2 LWs, or everybody kind of calls it something different. The wide nose GP40-2s in Pan Am paint is one of the things that'll be in the fourth quarter Diesel Era. HO Collector Annual is out. It's been out about a month or so, and you can find all that stuff. You can go to shop.whiteriverproductions.com and check it all out.
Great stuff. Well, Tony, want to thank you for coming by and sharing what's happening in model railroading.
Thanks a lot, Ray. Always a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.